Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our bite-sized learning on the outcomes of COP28. I'm Evan, the Environment and Climate Change Manager at the UN Global Compact Network Australia. And before we get started, I'd like to recognize that I'm hosting this webinar or Zoom meeting from Wadawurrung country. I also recognize the traditional owners of the countries from where all of our participants are viewing and the First Nations people present in this webinar or meeting. And I pay my respects to all elders, past and present, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and their cultures and connections to the land and waters of Victoria and beyond. It's so good to have everyone tuning in today. Today's Bite-Sized Learning interview features UNGCNA Director Susan Mizrahi, who has been representing the UNGCNA at COP28 in the UAE. Just as a little background, Susan is a renowned sustainability strategist and is currently serving as an honorary fellow in Melbourne Climate Futures program at the University of Melbourne. In her list, a long list of sustainability accolades, Ms. Mizrahi's recent experiences include serving as the Chief Sustainability Officer at AusPost, working in executive and other leadership positions with the Australian Retailers Association, the Committee for Business for Social Impact, or Societal Impact, sorry, and the Australian Centre for Corporate Social Responsibility and Vision 2020 Australia. And I could probably go on and on, Susan, but you've had such an incredible career. We're so grateful. We're so lucky to have you here today. We'll also be joined by our environment and climate change intern, Baxter Drury, and he'll be asking some questions as well. So thanks, Susan, for coming on. Thanks so much for having us. Thanks for, coming at such an odd hour amidst your travels and sharing what you've learned.
It's my absolute pleasure. Hi, Evan. Hi, Baxter, and hello, everyone. I've been at COP for the past week, and it's just been an extraordinary experience. So we'll dig into that.
I wanted to kind of ask about what the atmosphere was like at COP28. Can you kind of describe the vibe and the business presence, especially in relation to Australian businesses?
Yeah, terrific. So first up, COP28 has been held in Dubai. It's the conference of the parties. So really the official part of COPs are for the negotiating parties to come together, the members of the United Nations to come together and negotiate action in relation to climate change. This COP that was held in Dubai was attended by more than 85,000 people. So obviously it was more than just the parties coming together, but there was a whole trade show. There were, strategy houses there, civil society, you name it. They had a presence there, unfortunately, including the oil and gas lobby. But as a participant, as somebody that went along, look, the event was extremely well put together. The Emirati people are extremely hospitable. The event was held at the expo site, which is filled with all these amazing pavilions, a lot of which have LEED certification. And so it felt like you were in this sort of utopian, sustainable world with people of every age group, people of every nationality running around, and it was a real melting pot. And it was a very exciting energy. But it's a few steps away from the original intent of a COP, which is to negotiate international positions around climate change.
So in terms of those negotiations, in terms of key outcomes and impact, what did you see from Australian business? What were some of the impacts that kind of stuck with you the most out of the negotiations at COP28?
So a lot of my counterparts from other Australian companies had a presence there. Sometimes you'd spend days and not see anyone, but business was represented. I think the most exciting thing from an Australian perspective was the presence of Fortescue, Fortescue Future Energies, as they're now called, which is the offshoot of Fortescue Metals Group, and will, over time, as I believe, override and take over that entity. But Andrew Forrest was there alongside John Kerry and had brought a boat that they'd retrofitted from Singapore to Dubai. They've retrofitted this boat so that it can travel using ammonia, not just diesel fuel. And the significance of that is that over time, that will be able to transport hydrogen to ports around the world. At the moment, the policy conditions in countries around the world don't let the importation of ammonia. And so his bringing this boat to Dubai was a real statement to say, hey, we need change in the policy front. So if you backtrack a little bit, in 2015, with the Paris Agreement, the world's countries were still bickering about the climate science. That sort of has moved on now. The North Star is the commitment to 1.5 degrees by 2050. And so, one of the things that really struck home to me being in Dubai was there's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of amazing technology out there that was on display with all of these various pavilions and the trade show element. But it really needs goodwill by the governments and action by business to really create transformative change. And I was really excited to see that some of the most boldest statements were from an Australian business.
So what did you see in terms of Australia's commitment to renewable energy? What did you see about the global dialogue on renewable energy? It seemed like there was a lot of positive energy around renewable energy, so to speak.
I mean, there absolutely was. I think it's really exciting that the Australian government position has changed so sharply in a very short while since the current government came into power. Traditionally, Australia has been viewed as a laggard in conferences like this. We've had a Minister for Climate Change, Chris Bowen, provide the Australian statement on Saturday and articulate Australia's changed position, which is a phase out of fossil fuels, not just a phase down. That's really come up close to the Australian government position on climate change, given my various hats over the past 10 years. That was really welcome, and it's very refreshing for delegates and for those in attendance to hear that altered position. At the same time, I should add that Australia has committed to a number of new announcements and so forth that were made at COP. It's committed to align international investment strategies and followed up on some of the initiatives that were announced at previous COPs. But at the end of the day, Australia is still considering establishing new coal-fired power stations, and it's still subsidising the fossil fuel industry. So there's a ways to go.
You kind of already mentioned that you were impressed by Fortescue, so from like a business point of view, but just in a general sense, what were you most impressed by at COP28 with Australia's commitments and negotiation?
So that changed position of the current government has been really welcome. I had just a casual conversation at one point with somebody and was making reference to the fact that Australia is hoping to host a COP in a few years' time, and they rolled their eyes and were very dismissive of Australia, which is, as an Australian overseas, you don't usually get that reaction, but perhaps that shouldn't be surprising in this sort of context. I actually personally think that if Australia was able to host a COP in partnership with our neighbours in the Pacific Islands in a couple of years' time, it would generate a lot of understanding and conversation, hopefully understanding in the Australian context about this issue, even more than there is today. So I think it's really interesting to see the response to Australia's changed policy position in relation to climate, and hopefully Australia will continue in that manner in the period ahead. At this point in time, the final wording of the COP forum has not yet been agreed on. Literally, as we're speaking, there's teams of people ferociously negotiating of the agreement. When COPs are held, the ideal outcome is an agreed accord of all of the parties. And certainly Australia, as I understand it, has been taking the position to phase out instead of phase down fossil fuels. Not all parties are taking that stance. And as I said, it's a different position to what we've seen in the past from Australia. So that's been very welcome.
So what's next, Susan? What do you want to see next? What do you want to see next from Australian businesses and sustainability? We're gearing up now for Azerbaijan to engage in the next COP after these negotiations come to a screeching halt. what would you like to see next?
I think a couple of things. I mean, I made mention to the fact that it would be terrific if we had the ability to host COP in our region, exciting for Australian businesses. But you know what? But that's a reference to what's happening at the international stage and to the policy position. And there's certainly things that the Global Compact member organisations can do to take action at home. And the first thing that companies need to do, if they haven't already done, is to set a science-based target that is aligned with the Paris Agreement, so that the goal and the North Star of 1.45 degrees by 2050. I might just add also that, you know, inside conversations that I had with people at COP, I had a really interesting conversation with somebody that has been doing a lot of work around AI. And he was actually digging into the data and bringing together data from different data streams to support the science. And one of the things that he said to me was actually he thinks that the science is a lot more catastrophic and the scenario is a lot worse than is currently being understood at a global level. So we cannot, you know, nobody can be left behind here. We need the support of every business. Every business needs to take action and have a science-based target, and to really reconsider their business model and to make the transition to clean and renewable energies.
Thank you again, Susan, for coming on, you know, and giving us your experience from COP28. You know, until next time, we're looking forward to COP29. We'll have some more programming built out for our participants, but we really appreciate your insights and you working through the jet lag and, you know, just coming on here and just being so incredible. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Until then,
Nice.
have a great night. See you all later.